If you're new here, hello and welcome. This is my go through the world of my books that haven't been published yet, but I'm working on it, don't worry. If you've been here, hello and welcome back again. I'm gonna try to focus more on going through it really quickly, but since the countries are kind of important and we already settled we're going to be talking about them and you want it, so yeah, enjoy. Also, there's a possibility that nobody watched the video before and I just deleted it from the face of the internet. Can't do things like that. So again, welcome. I'm happy to have you. So the country we're going to take a look at now is still on Yahimos, which means the main continent where most of the story happens. It's like 95% of the story is based on Yahimos, or okay, maybe 90%, but it's mostly there. And so there are, if you look at the whole continent, there are the two biggest country based on the color blue and red, and then there's the yellow we already covered, which means Nebraska. And I think it's a good idea to look at Narral, which means the green one, because it's small and it's kind of quick one. And then we can move on to the big ones, which means the big players and the big families. And see, I'm already talking for 2.5 minutes and I didn't get to anything yet. So Narral, as you can see, is like this long noodle. I think that's the best description I can come up with at the moment. So it's getting smaller and smaller throughout the years, and the main reason why is because Narral is the only country on the continent that's openly against magic, and they are very vocal about it, and they usually attack the other countries, and they want to make sure that you understand that magic is not the way to go and you shouldn't be even thinking about it. You shouldn't be trying to do something about it. You should just listen to them and forbid magic from the world, which isn't going to happen because mainly the leading factions are all magic based, and so yeah, that little dream of Narral people isn't probably going to happen. But the main thing why the country is still there is at a certain point in the history there were people saying we don't want to interact with magic on daily basis, and the rulers of the other nations were well, that's kind of understandable. You're just a bunch of ordinary people and we don't want to force you to use magic. So yeah, go make your own country and do whatever you want with the piece of the land. And so it started a really nice, peaceful, everything's peachy, and then it changed. Narral started pretty much as this pretty country with people without magic, and it started as such, but mages were still born there because for them it's a little what is it called, mutation, right? The gene mutation. So someone is born with magic and someone is born without it, basically. And so people with magic, or kids with magic, were born there, and they were thinking first, maybe it's the place, this whole world is infested with magic, so maybe if we get rid of the magic, the people won't be bored with magic. And so they tried to get all of the power from the soil, and they kind of fucked up and made like little patches of ground where there's nothing, like the ground is dead and nothing lives there or can grow there because there are no nutrition or something. So they kind of fucked that part up. And since they are like really not effective but really into it, so they kind of overdo it, and yeah, they for some parts completely destroyed the land. Aside from there, it's mostly coastal region, so it's like fishermen, some places around the bigger ports, but again there's not that many ports, so it's like really mountains, and then there's a coast and a sea leading to another part of the world, but that part is also owned by the heirs, or like the red ones, so they don't really have much to go on. They kind of, like I said, they kind of screw themselves over, even though they had good intentions, and it didn't really work for them all that well, because that magic or like the mutations that would allow you to be a mage in that universe was already in that people. It's like, you know, brown hair, brown eyes kind of situation, and so depending on who you would go to bed with, then either a mage or a non-mage would be born. And since like people from throughout the empire were slowly coming to Narral, but no one really at that point was like, we need to check them, like, you know if they can be mage or not. Nothing like that happened, so it's like mix of people, and there's a high chance there will be mage. And so we're probably going to get to that part on the culture, but they're basically using the mages born there. And if you're in a Narral and you happen to be born a mage, then you are not free. So it's like kind of the normal logic, or like the logic of the world. Normally it's just flipped. And so Narral is very radical, and because they already managed to destroy such a huge part of the world, and you like go there, and around the big cities like Tarnata or Balares, you just go there and there are like some fields with crop, and it looks kind of good, but it's hot, and you can already like feel something happen there, because you go from the normal country, which means probably Thessalia, and like the closest city is Oakford or something, like the big city. So you're like, there's 20 Celsius, and you're like, it's such a nice day. And then the same day you like cross the borders, you not going south or north. Another fun thing about me, you'll probably learn really soon, I can't tell where is east and west. I always have to Google it, and from time to time I don't know which hand is right and which one is left. So I'm just gonna let it somewhere here. But yeah, you just cross the borders and suddenly it's like 35-40 degrees there, and nothing changed. Like the sky above you is just the same, the day is just the same. It's maybe like an hour later, but it's still the same. If you use magic, it's like a minute later or something. And you can like feel something happen there. Same thing, like you can feel it in Drasko. So it's like not really natural, and you're like already thinking, okay, this is something else, and it is. So yeah, there's a lot of these places, and since one part of the country, or like there is a natural border made out of mountains, but also the mountains are part of Narral, and you can't really like live there or like effectively grow something there, then Narral is always trying to like conquer more and more land from the other countries, and when you look at it you can already see how successful they are, because they are just getting smaller and smaller, and so they're really fighting at this point to just survive and like keep some of the non-magic inflicted world for them, like for the ordinary people who just want to get up in the morning, do some manual labor and go back to sleep, and it's not really working for them. Also, most of the people on the continent would tell them to just move south to Slurty, and it definitely would be a better, like, well, better everything. But since Narral is very like oppressive to its people and they want to like keep this ideology that just because we don't have a magic it doesn't mean we're not good or it doesn't work here, it does. They aren't really going to get their people, they're not going to give them the leave or just like let them board a ship and like go somewhere. Same goes for the borders, so there are like border patrols and all of it, because they simply want to show everyone that they are right, and their ideology and the whole political system where they're like, you know, mages should serve us, not we to them, because they are the mutation and not us. We are the perfect humans and we always were the perfect humans. Only, you know, some family 100 or actually thousands years ago decided that we are the wrong one. That's not how it works here, right? And so the country isn't really that remarkable when you think about it, because sure, they have some culture and they are trying to make like a big impressive architectural pieces, but compared to those built with magic and like the skill of the world that can pay for the skill, it's like it's nothing in comparison. And so Narral is really struggling, not only geographically but also in every other aspect. So yeah, that's kind of the grim, not so funny place in the universe, but some good characters are still there. For example, Katarina, or the blonde as she's known. She's a huge part of Narral and the whole thing, the whole this is how it works, and she's going to explain it later. So, you know, I've been pretty much talking here to myself for like the past 40 minutes and I already feel like my sanity is going to shit. We're going to be looking at Athran today, which means the blue continental part. I was gonna say the blue country, but the English just skipped. So yeah, I'm gonna try to make it as brief as possible, and you know, it's one of the more important, like actually really important part of the world, and also geographically more interesting. So let's get to it. Right, so as I was saying before being interrupted by the delivery, which I'm not too angry about because it were my contact lenses. But yeah, Athran is like really important, and the second huge family, or like the second ruling family, is from there basically. So yeah. It's this big blue blob on the map, and when you look at it, it's like on the mainland it takes like 1/3 of the whole thing, and then when you go to Mergohensia, which is the island on the right, it takes some space there. That thing happens in the successor, so let's just ignore it and let's just ignore the whole of Mergo for now, and let's just move to the main part. So when you look at it, Athran has the advantage of sharing borders with all the other nations, but for the most part it's Zesea, which means the red ones, and the other two, it's like just only tiny bit, and every time there's a war they have kind of the advantage of not being pulled into the war as much on the mainland. So that's kind of good for them. When you look at like the whole thing, the lower part of Athran, or like the southern part of Athran, is still in a very moderate climate. Some people even manage to grow wine there, which is kind of important for the world. Like the wine production is kind of insane, especially in Zesea. And then when you're going like up and up, there's a huge amount of forests, and Athran is profiting on that. They're like the main export force, I think it could be said like that. They are the main like export player, and so they are giving or like selling their wood to all the other countries around, because Terasco is a desert, so where would they grow trees? Narral is kind of the same. They only go from a desert to mud and what is it, basin? Yeah, basin. The muddy thing you can I was going to say swim in, but I don't know if someone's swimming in basins. And then of course Zesea, and only if you look at the map, and it's like a very basic map, but if you look at it, there's not that much trees there, right? Because Zesea is mainly about like we're gonna make it pretty here, so there's going to be a huge city, and then there's going to be like, I don't know, a shrine of the size of, I don't know, I don't want to say football station, but like 10 times that, because they are like this crazy. So yeah, they are the main people with wood, and they kind of profit on it. They profit on it a lot. So that's like the basic. There are also a lot of mountains surrounding either the coast or like the main part, or for the events, main part, which means the true north, which people usually call the capital of Athran, which is the Thun, and the city is like below a mountain. The mountain range is called Arlentanga, and the royal family of Athran, which are the Steels, they kind of use Arlentanga as their own personal symbol. And so when there's something from the family, there's either a wolf on it, or there are like these two little triangles there symbolizing Arlentanga, because to them not only the castle they live in is partly carved into Arlentanga, but also it's like the protection from the very, like, not mountains, from the mountain breeze and like the really cold air which sometimes get into the city but not into their own personal castle, because that's in the mountains, shattered by the mountains, or sheltered, not shattered. Those are the two like main things you can see on the map. And there's also a lot of ports for Athran, and for all the other countries the ports are kind of important, because in an event where magic would fail, ports could be used to like connect the mainlands. And there's a lot of ports. I was already talking about it with my D&D players, and some readers tend to mention it also. It's like my problem with ports. and when you look at it, there's more than one part, like one significant part. So Ekrana, obviously in Terasco, it's like the port to connect the Yahimos, or the continent Yahimos, with the other one, which is Athran. And since Cadwallon isn't really using portals or something, he, or the islanders in general, like to sail, so they would be, you know, connected with them throughout Ekrana, and then the main goods would get to the other countries, or they would like float to Are or maybe Nerkam, depends on what kind of shipment it is. But so the port, why was I talking about them? Because most of the events are centered around some port, which means in the tune there's not really a port. Like there could be a smaller port, but thanks to the mountains, or like because of the mountains, there's not really a point to have a huge port. If you look closer to it, there's like this symbol. It symbolizes the huge continental portal, not part. So when you look at this, this symbol right here, the like, what is it, hexagon, I think, with the pointy thingies, it's the symbol for the capital city. So there's the tune. When you look down, there's Nerkam, also with the same symbol, and there's also the same symbol for the portal, which means even if you are a peasant and you don't have your own kind of magic, you can buy a ticket and get from one place to another. And most of the big places have these portals. I'm just gonna add them later to the map, but also like Mergohensia has the same type of portal. And these big like continental portals are also used for smuggling and transporting goods. So whenever you have something you want to get out of the country or into the country, and you don't really have the permission from like, I don't know, army or government of some country, and they aren't going to open a portal for you, you can use this peasant portal, kind of. And it's just for the masses. Main characters are usually situated around portals. Not only there's a port, what was I saying, portal or port, whatever, the ship thingy. Not only there's a port in Nerkam, which is like the center of the whole empire. There's pretty much this entire thing. It's also like most of the characters have some sort of access to a port. Steven, which is the main character in the successor, is kind of like the only one who doesn't really get his share of ports, because he's situated in Dithune, and so, you know, he very regularly visits Nerkam, so he has the port there if he needed it. But Karkatu and Talur, if we get back to Athran, are both huge port cities, and each of them belongs or is governed by one of Steven's brother. So Karkatu belongs to Emmet, which is the main character from the other son and the middle child in the family, and Luke is situated in Talur, and he's the oldest. So first is Luke with his own little port, and he has this like, he's kind of on the north and it's getting colder there, so there's like this mountain lakes around Talur, and it's like a really beautiful nature, like the absolutely green vital grass that you can see in like Switzerland or something like that. So that's right there, and everyone is like so envious of it because it's just really pretty. and the disadvantage is kind of he doesn't really have woods there, but then again he's like, there's, if you go south a little, there is a blue steel mine which we'll get to in a minute. It's these little daggers on the maps. And Kakadu, then there's Emmet, and he's like so into just having his apartment or flat or whatever, and he's like looking at the port and he loves that it's busy and at any time of day or night. And the reason why that part is important, because if you look at it again, Ekrana kind of serves as the entry point to the continent, but if Athran is having something shipped from the, I don't know, Athran or like only the islanders, or Zaik as the emperor, or Farak before him, they would most probably use the Karkatu port. So it's like important, or like that important. There could be like one port up ahead, like right next to Ditune, but I was thinking it would be like really cold there, because that's like the very north and everyone knows it's like cold, freezing, usually with snow, or it's raining there like most of the time, so the weather is kind of crazy there, so there's not a point for having an important port there, because something might happen there and you know the shippings would get delayed or something. So they would just go to Karkatu, which is like this little nice cranny in the continent where they can like, the ships can just land and wait there for a week or two, replenish and go somewhere else. So I'm also out of tea and I didn't even get to the main part, which is Zesia. So yeah, but the next thing about Athran is these little daggers on the map which symbolize the blue steel mine, and that's like the main attraction in Athran at like any point of its history, because if you look at the map, there's like a lot of mountains, or there should probably be even more. I didn't draw them there, but compared to Zesia, there's like one mountain range sharing the border with Narral, and then there's like this little Cascan kind of mountain, like pretty much the lonely mountain. There's no dragon, but like the lonely mountain in the whole place. But if you look at Athran, there's multiple like hills and mountains and all of that, and inside of those there are veins of steel, right? And throughout the centuries where magic was getting into the contact with the steel, it created something that was later called blue steel. Blue because it's kind of, it has like this blue hue, and steel, well, because it's still steel, only it has some magical properties in it and it makes the steel being better than the regular steel. So the whole family kind of built their name on it, and like they discovered it, they changed their name instantly, so out of no one they suddenly became this Steel's family that suddenly has this amazing material, and they were like the first that kind of understood that if you mine out the whole mine, there won't be much left, and the magic isn't really going to get through all of the ores, if that makes sense. So they were like first to like go through individual caves and like measuring the amount of magic in the ore, and they figure out that, you know, if you go deep enough, then there was probably a longer exposure to the magic and the ore is so much more better. And if you go like top side, the magic didn't really get into there, and so there's no point in mining it. And since their ore was so much better than anyone else in Athran, they got all the wealth from it, and later, a lot later, they became the ruling family, which I will get to later. But for the people who already read it, that's one reason why the heirs chose the steels for independent Athran. So yeah, that's Athran.